All of these trellises are for tomatoes, as well as cucumbers and squash. Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to work on trellising our raised bed garden. Come with me and let's get started. Today we're going to work on trellising. There's still a lot of work that needs to happen in the garden. The ground is super wet, which is actually perfect timing for me to install my T-post and get my trellising up. So that's what we're going to focus on today. And then as the weather continues to improve, we will work on other tasks that need to happen in the garden. So I've already purchased my T-post and my cattle panel to replace this wire that I used last year because I couldn't find anyone to help me transport cattle panel, but a co-worker, Mr. Todd, was very nice to help me out this year to get the cattle panel to my house. So thank you, Todd. So the tools that we will need for the cattle panel, one is the T-post driver. For $30 or so, it makes driving these T-posts into the ground much, much easier. So we'll have the T-post driver, the T-post, and the panel. And that's all that we need outside of bolt cutters that I will need to cut the cattle panel down into 8-foot, 10-foot, and 6-foot sections, because my beds are anywhere from 6 feet all the way up to 10 feet long. So we will get started on that. I'm going to set the camera up so you can watch me go through the steps. The first thing that I needed to do before I started setting up the cattle panel was to remove all of this wiring left over from last year. The wiring did okay in supporting the tomatoes, but it started giving as the season went on. The cattle panels would give it constant support throughout the season, and I look forward to the cattle panel being used in place of this wire. All right, the first step was getting that wire off. I have the wire off. The next thing I'm going to do is start positioning my T-post so I can drive them into the ground. In my 6-foot bed back there, I have 3 T-posts. I can't figure out which way to go. 1, 2, 3. And I only need 2. So I'm going to try to wiggle one of those out and replace that into another area. And then I'm going to take my T-post driver and try to get those into the ground. So let me get started. To install the T-posts, the first thing that I wanted to do is to just lightly press them in the ground to get them in place before I came behind with the T-post driver to secure them properly. The T-post driver weighs about 18 pounds, and you have to put it over the T-post. And then just with the sheer weight of the driver itself, you can actually drive the T-post into the ground to the proper height. I'm very short, so I needed a step stool to get up high enough to insert the T-post driver over the T-post. One of the other things I had to overcome were the different lengths of T-posts that I have. The T-posts that I purchased were actually on clearance or sale. I can't remember which one of the two. And I picked up multiple sizes. I needed longer T-posts for the tomato plants, but I could use the shorter ones for my grapes as well as for my cucumbers and squash. In the video, you're going to see me moving my drip irrigation around. I never cleaned up my garden from last year, so I had drip irrigation everywhere. So I needed to move it out of the way so that I could properly install that last T-post to that area. Since I had so many different size T-posts, I had to really be careful to make sure I use the proper ones in the same beds. I typically space my T-post out at least 4 feet apart, but no more than 6 feet apart. You definitely want to have plenty of stability with your cattle panels trying to hold up tomatoes and other vegetables. They can become very heavy throughout the year as they begin to grow and bear fruit. All right. I have all my T-post in, and boy, that post driver weighs 18 pounds and it will take your wind. Um, but this bed here will have cucumbers and I believe squash. I have to go back and check my plan, but I'm going to trellis those cucumbers and squash right here next to my she shed. These trellis here will have cucumbers and like peas, like snap peas, sugar snap peas. My girls love them. I don't like them, but that'll be in that bed there. And everywhere else you see the T-post will be tomatoes, all tomatoes. So the next step for me is to start dragging those cattle panels over and laying them next to the areas where I need to put them. I'll be right back. My cattle panels are 16 feet long and 50 inches high, and they are a little difficult to handle, not because they're heavy, it's just that they're so long. And so I had a little trouble getting it into place so that I could figure out the proper place to cut it and to get it down to size. It's more cost effective to buy the 16-foot cattle panels versus the 8-foot panels. So having someone with a truck that can transport is critical in order to be able to save that money. I used my wire cutters or bolt cutters to cut the panel down to the right size, and then I moved the second panel or the second piece of the panel over to another section. So I was able to complete 2 beds with one panel. Because I was having such issues trying to handle the cattle panel, my sister came out to help me move the cattle panel into place and hold it for me as I cut it down to size. She was a big help in getting this project completed quickly. It was actually a little trial and error to figure out the best way to cut each of the panels down to size. We first tried to do it with the panels standing up, but we found we could get better leverage with the bolt cutters if we laid it down to cut them to the right size. After putting the second piece of this cattle panel in place, we had 2 more beds, and I was really concerned on if I was going to have enough cattle panel to manage both spaces. But after cutting it, we found out we had the proper size. Yay! Look at that! All right. All of my trellises are leaning where they need to be. I just need to secure them. The one area that I didn't do the trellis for are my grapes. And when I do the grapes, I got to put the fire rings in place and everything. So we'll do all of that as one project. But all of the tomatoes and the cucumber trellises have been cut to size. All we need to do now is hang them. Okay, we are going to, I think I figured out how to use the little T-post clips. So we're going to get those installed. I did this. Look at that. You shouldn't have to hold it once I get this top on there.
There is actually a T-post clip tool that you can purchase to put the clips on. I don't have the tool, so I'm just using a pair of pliers.
Look at that. One trellis up. Let's go work on another.
The more of these we did, we got into a rhythm and a groove on how to get them put up and how to quickly install the clips. We started working much faster as we went from one to the next.
Okay. We have 3 to go. 1, 2, 3 complete. And 1, 2, 3 to go. Let's move you over to the next ones.
You can see that we're putting the panels up quite high on this particular trellis. I will explain in just a few minutes why some of the trellis are high up and some are closer to the ground.
Hopefully you can hear me on the camera there. But for the tomatoes, I put the trellis about 18 inches, a foot and a half to 2 feet high, because the tomatoes can support themselves up to about 2 feet, 3 feet tall. And that gives me more trellis, more height on the trellis for those. But for my cucumbers and my squash, I'm putting the trellis closer to the ground because they can't support themselves. And so they start vining early, and I'll have to start training them early. So for this very last one that we're going to do is for cucumbers and squash. So we're not going to raise it high off the ground, similar to the one here next to the she shed.
For these last two trellis, another reason why I wanted them lower is because they're right in front of my she shed in front of the window, and I like to look out the window into the garden, into the spaces, and I didn't want to block that view. So I am intentionally only putting cucumbers and squash in this space.
That's it. All of the tomato trellis are done. The cucumber trellis are done. The squash trellis are done. So let me show you our work. All right. So we actually put trellis up in 6 areas. So I want you to see those trellises now. All of these trellises are for tomatoes, as well as cucumbers and squash. Thanks for hanging out and spending time with me getting these trellis up, helping us prep for the 2023 season. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel. We have lots and lots of more videos to come. Thank you and have a great, blessed day. Bye-bye.